Hi, this weekend I photographed the Wasatch 100. It's an annual 100-mile trail race here in the mountains near Salt Lake City. And in shooting this mini documentary, I shot both video and stills, and both the equipment selection and also the process of photographing this event was a bit of a logistical challenge. So I thought I would share with you some of the gear that I took alongside with me for this shoot. I used two different camera setups and two different rigs because I had to balance almost two opposite ends of the photography spectrum. For one thing, I wanted best image quality in low light in particular, very low light as in the depths of night. And so for one setup that I used at the start, at the finish, and at a couple of points at the aid stations where the runners come through and they get refreshments, they can change shoes, they can fill up their water bottles, that kind of thing. They could get medical attention if need be. I used this rig. This was the E5 camera body and the 14 to 35 millimeter f2 lens. I selected this lens in particular because it is an f2 lens. That means it has a very wide maximum aperture, making it a really good choice for low light. I chose the E5 because it fit really well on this Red Rock micro stabilization rig. This is the Captain Stubling. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to support it and get a much more stable video platform. A lot of people like to use it. This is a modular system. A lot of people like to use this with this grip vertically like this. It felt more comfortable to me to have it down below, but that's what's nice about the system, is it is modular. This piece here is a follow focus, which allows you to make more precise adjustments to track as your subject moves in or moves out. You can track kind of like a Hollywood level cinema. This here on the back is the LCD VF viewfinder magnifier. There's a magnetic plate that mounts to your LCD, and then this just sticks on top here, and you can look through the viewfinder, and that allows you to check critical focus, especially when you're making these types of precise adjustments. So again, I used this at the start, at the finish, and at a couple of key points in the race. I knew that the ambient sound was going to be possibly useful, but I wasn't sure how much I would use it. So kind of at the last minute, I just zip tied my shotgun microphone to the base of the rig. Ordinarily you want to have it up higher so you don't capture the handling noise of adjusting focus or moving your hands along the grips. But in this case it worked pretty well having it down low. It's out of sight of the camera, and I could plug it directly into the port on the side of the camera. And I was able to capture some useful sound. It was pretty noisy with generators and so forth in the aid station, so I don't think that will make a lot into the final movie, but it's always good to have nonetheless. So this was the first rig. The second system here, again, is on the opposite end of the spectrum. For about 10 miles of the race, I ran with the runner and his pace setter, and we were covering mountainous terrain on a single track trail that was pretty remote, so I needed to travel light and fast, and yet at the same time have flexibility for capturing anything that might come my way. So I chose this camera bag and wore it with this harness actually mounted to my chest, and inside I carried the Olympus EP3, the new pen camera, and I used predominantly the 14 to 150 millimeter lens. That covers in 35 terms, that covers a 28 to 300 millimeter range, which is a really good range, and it allowed me to capture things that were both wide angle, like the landscapes or kind of the openness of the terrain, but also be able to zoom in on occasion to capture a tighter shot of the runner. When I was doing that, I would typically try and brace the camera body against an aspen tree or something like that. Of course, I could shoot both stills and video with this. Also inside the camera bag, a lens cleaning cloth, and I had a second one in my running short so that I could have it quick access, spare battery, and a circular polarizer. I use this both for polarization of the light, but even more importantly to knock down the amount of light in the scene by 2 f-stops. That allowed me to keep my shutter speed at 1/60th of a second, especially when we got toward the middle part of the day where it was very bright and sunny. Also inside the bag, although I didn't use them as much, I carried 2 additional lenses and a hat. Never leave home without that in the mountains. I carried 2 additional lenses, the 17 millimeter f2 and the 9 to 18 millimeter micro four thirds. I didn't end up using this in the end because everything was covered with these 2 lenses. So in hindsight, I would leave this one home and save a little weight. I use this predominantly toward the middle part of the day, toward the dawn, when the light was very low. For one thing, it's ultra compact. It sits almost flush against the face of the camera, but it had a wider maximum aperture, so it gave me a little bit more flexibility in the early light of twilight and just after the dawn. But once the light levels got up a little bit, I switched to this lens and stuck with that almost entirely. A couple of additional things that I found valuable that you might as well. For the sections of the trail that were sort of close to the road, in the middle part of the race, I actually ran in with this tripod. It's an ultralight carbon fiber tripod, and I didn't bring a video pan or tilt head, anything like that. I just chose a static head, but it allowed me to stabilize the camera, which is really important with any CMOS-based video camera. If you have too much camera movement, you get the rolling shutter, what's sometimes referred to as jello shutter, and it happens with all of these types of cameras. And I find it particularly noticeable in handheld shots where the camera itself is moving at different intervals. It's not a smooth pan or a zoom. So the stabilization rig that I referred to earlier is really helpful for that. And of course a tripod is fantastic for locking that down. Then lastly, when I'm shooting with this, I like to use this electronic viewfinder. This slides into the port on the top of the EP3 and the EP2. And this allows me to look through the top here instead of having to look at the LCD on the back of the camera. This is very valuable, particularly in low light. There's also some magnification that you get from this, so you can check focus as well. So that was the setup I used. Predominantly these three lenses and this one camera body performed the bulk of the photography for this project. I did carry the EP2 as a second camera body, carried that in my Camelback, but I ended up not needing it, fortunately. But it's always good to travel with a spare. So there you have it. That was what's in my camera bag for the Wasatch 100, and I hope it was helpful to you. So this is Jay Kinghorn signing off.